Thank you very much. Welcome you to MedZone African Motives. We are on chapter 2 of Business Studies Grade 12, whereby we are going to look at human resource, uh, human resources as our chapter. So that is term 1 notes. So without wasting much time, let us go to terms and definitions so that we know the terminology of what we are going to talk about in this chapter. So that is that. So the first term is job analysis. As it says, the term job analysis refers to the components of job description and job specification, and as it relates to employees within an organization. So meaning to say, when you're talking about job analysis, that is a breaking a job into its duties, breaking a job into its duties, breaking a job into its duties. So that is when you're talking about job description and the worker requirements and the worker requirements and the worker requirements. So when you talk of the worker requirements, that is when you're talking about a specification. So that is that. So for example, a business duty, business that is the task of cashier, that is job description, and the skills needed. Now we're talking about what? A job specification. So that is that when we talk of what? Job analysis. We break a job into its duties. That's when we're talking about job description. And the worker requirements. That's when we're talking about job specification. The skills that are needed to do that, to perform all those duties that we've talked about. So now let us quickly go to job description now. Job description. So job description describes the duties and responsibility of a specific job. So meaning to say it's a list of duties and responsibility. A list of duties and responsibilities. And responsibilities. That is job description. For example, a cashier must scan items and handle cash. So that is the list of duties that a cashier must do. Now moving on to job specification, as they are saying, describes the minimum acceptable personal qualities, skills, qualifications needed for the job. So it means that we are saying, when we're talking about job specification, we're talking about minimum skills. We're talking about minimum skills, qualifications, and qualities and qualities needed for a job. That's job what? Specification. For example, a cashier needs basic math and communication skills. So that is that. We're talking about the qualifications, we're talking about the skills that are needed for us to perform duties and our responsibilities that we talked about in job description. So let us move on to recruitment. Let us move on to recruitment. It says recruitment is the process used by business to identify vacancies in the business and attract suitable candidates for it. And attract suitable candidates for it. So it means that recruitment, that is finding, we're talking about finding and attracting. Finding and attracting candidates to fill vacancies. That is a recruitment. So, meaning to say, we're saying, for example, a shop advertises a vacant cashier position. So that is finding and attracting candidates to fill the vacancies. So that is that. So now let us move on to internal recruitment. As they're saying, it refers to the use of internal sources to advertise vacancies within organization. So we're talking about what? Internal recruitment. So that is a filling vacancies using current employees. We are saying filling a vacancy, filling a vacancy using current employees. Using current employees. So that is that. So that is internal, like promoting a stock picker to a cashier. You see? So that is that. Now let us come to external now. External recruitment. External recruitment refers to the use of external sources to advertise vacancies uh, within an organization. So with external now, we are saying filling a vacancies using people outside the organization. Here you are filling a vacancy, a vacancy using people outside, using people outside the organization. So that is that. So, for example, advertising the job on social media. So that is a external recruitment. So now let us move on to interview. Interview. It says interview refers to a conversation between a job applicant and a representative of an employer, which is conducted to assess whether the applicant should be hired for a vacancy. So meaning to say, when you talk of interview, you're saying it is a formal conversation to assess candidates' suitability. We are saying interview is a formal conversation. Formal conversation to assess a candidate's suitability. A candidate, a candidate suitability. Suitability. So that's when you're talking about what interview. For example, the manager interviews applicants for a sales job. So that is that. So now let us go to interviewer. Let us know the interviewer. It says it refers to a representative of an employer conducting the interview. So it's the person who asks questions in the interview. So the interviewer is the person who asks questions in the interview. in the interview. That is our interviewer. The HR manager can be our interviewer, representing an employer. So that is that. Now let us move on to interviewee. Interviewee, as it says, refers to job applicant who made himself available for the interviewer after being shortlisted. That is interviewee. So interview, the candidate who attends the interview. The candidate who attend who attends the interview. Who attends the interview. So that is the person applying for a job. For example, a person who's applying for the cashier job. So that is that. Now let us move on to induction now. Let us be on induction. As it says, it refers to the process of interviewing introducing new employees to the business and its related aspects. That is induction. Introducing new employees to the business. Introducing new employees to the business. To the business. That is induction. Now we're coming to placement. So a placement is the process whereby a new employee is placed in a vacant position. So it means now you are putting your employee in the correct job role. Putting the new employee in the correct job role. In the correct job role. So that is that. In the correct job role. So that is a placement. Now we come to training skills development. As it says, it refers to the acquisition of new skills and knowledge by employees. So it means teaching employee new skills. Teaching employee new skills. For example, training a worker to use a new machinery. So you're teaching that person a new skills of operating a new machinery. Retrenchment now. With retrenchment, as it says, process whereby organization reduces the number of employees for operational reasons. That is a retrenchment. So reducing staff means reducing staff due to operational or financial reasons. Due to operational or financial reasons. Or financial reasons. So that is that. So that is retrenchment. So now we come to employment contract. Employment contract. So it is an oral or written agreement specifying terms and conditions under which a person consents to perform certain duties in return for agreed upon wage or salary. So it can be written or agreement stating conditions of employment. piecemeal salary. Workers are paid according to the number of items or units produced. So here we are saying workers are paid per unit produced. So that is that. Time-related salary. Time-related salary determination. So with this time-related salary determination, it says workers are paid for the amount of time they spend on work or task. So it means paying employees based on time worked. Fringe benefits. Fringe benefits. So with fringe benefits, as it says, compensation beyond regular wage or salary to an employee, which are exempt from taxation as long as certain conditions are met. So it means these are the extra benefits given to employees beside salary. Hope it's clear. Now we come to compulsory benefits. Refers to benefits that business are legally required to offer its employees. So benefits employees must legally provide. These are what? Compulsory and compulsory benefits. So now we come to UIF. UIF. As it says, the fund offers short-term financial assistance to workers when they become unemployed or unable to work because of illness, maternity, or adoption leave. So it means that the UIF provides short-term financial support if workers are unemployed or unable to work. So that is that. BCEA, Basic Conditions Employment Act. Basic Conditions Employment Act. That is BCEA. As it says, this act regulates labor practices and set out the rights and duties of employees and employer. So that is BCEA. LRA, Labor Relations Act, ensures social justice by establishing the rights and duties of employers and employees in the workplace. So it makes sure that there is a good relationship between these two parties. EEA, that is Employment Equity Act, requires employers to engage in protective employment practices to increase representation of designated or disadvantaged groups in the workplace. SDA, Skills Development Act. This act regulates the improvement of skills of workers by promoting education and training in the workplace. So now we are to come to human resources activities. Human resources activities. So now we know the terminology of what you are going to discuss throughout this chapter, as now you know the definitions, terms and definitions that we've just discussed now. So now we're coming to the recruitment, as we've talked about the recruitment as finding and attracting a suitable applicants. So now we're going to talk about a recruitment. We are on recruitment. Meaning of recruitment. Meaning of recruitment. So here we are on meaning of recruitment. It says recruitment is the process used by business to identify vacancies in the business and attract suitable candidates for it. So, for example, when you are saying it's identifying vacancies and attracting suitable candidates for it, HR notices a resignation and starts looking for a replacement. So it means now it's going to identify the vacancies. Then he identified by noticing a resignation of an employee and starts looking for a replacement. That is that. It aims at finding candidates who have necessary knowledge and experience and qualification to fill the vacancy. So, for example, a business searches for qualified accountant to fill in accounting position. So, hope you understand it. Business may choose to use internal or external method of recruitment depending on the nature and requirements of the vacancy. As we've talked about this, that you can recruit either internally, whereby now you can advertise post to your current employees, or you can go for externally. So, for example, promote a supervisor that is internally, or advertise on the LinkedIn that is externally. So that is that. It is an ongoing process as employees leave the jobs for other jobs or get promoted or retire as a new technological skills are required. So it means, for example, a tech company regularly hires a new software skills are required. So it regularly hires as a new software skills are required. So that is that. Now let us go to recruitment procedure. Recruitment procedure. So here we are on a recruitment procedure. As it says, the human resource manager should prepare a job description in order to identify recruitment needs. Meaning to say, uh, as we are saying, it's the process used to identify vacancies and attract. Under recruitment procedure, what you're trying to say is that the HR manager prepares job description to identify recruitment needs, like we've said. For example, listing task of sales manager position. That is that. Also, HRM should indicate the job specification, description, key performance areas to attract suitable candidates. So, what you're saying, for example, is that degree in marketing plus 3 years experience, because you're saying he, HR manager, should do what? Indicate job specification. So you know when you talk of job specification, you're talking about the experience, qualifications that are needed to perform a task. That is what we're saying. For example, a degree in marketing plus 3 years experience. So that is that. Also prepares job analysis, which includes job specification and job description. So that is that. For example, full document describing duties and the required skills. That's when we talk about what? Job specification and job descriptions that are included in job analysis. A decision whether to recruit internally should be made to identify suitable candidates from within the business. So that is, for example, when HR checks if any current employee qualifies, that is that. If internal recruitment is unsuccessful, external recruitment should be considered. That is when, if internal fails, consider external recruitment. For example, no suitable staff advertise outside. That is that. If external recruitment is done, the relevant recruitment source should be selected. For example, recruitment agencies, teacher institutions, newspapers. So we are trying to say, choose recruitment source here. You choose recruitment source. For example, use recruitment agency for engineers, can go for newspapers and stuff like that. The advertisement should be prepared with relevant information. For example, the name of the company, contact details, contact person, and etc. So it means here we're saying prepare an advertisement with relevant information. For example, you're looking job title, salary range, contact details. Place the advertisement in an appropriate media that will ensure that the best candidates uh, apply. So here we are saying, for example, advertise a teacher vacancy in a local newspaper. That is why we're saying place the advert in the appropriate media. So now let us move on to the difference between a job description and job specification that we have just talked about. So with job description, it says job description describes duties, responsibility of specific job or summary of the nature or type of the job. So it means it describes duties and responsibilities. That is how short it is. For example, like we've said, cashier must scan items and balance till. Those are the descriptions that are needed to be performed by our cashier. Also, job specification specifies the minimum acceptable personal qualities and skills and qualifications needed for job. So with this one, job specification describe the minimum skills and qualifications needed. For example, grade 12 basic math skills and good communication skills. Those are our skills that are needed or qualifications that is needed. So that is job specification. So let us move on to another point under job description. The job description is a written description of job and its requirements. It's a written uh, is a written of description of job and its requirements. So the duties are now written down. What is required for the applicant? Also, it's a written description of specific qualifications and skills experience needed. So those qualifications, skills or experience needed should be in writing. Said should be in writing. Describe key performance areas, task for specific job. Example, job title, working conditions, relationship of the job with other jobs in the business. While job specification describes key requirements of a person who will fill the position, e.g., formal qualifications, willingness to travel, unusual hours. So that is that. So now let us move on. So now we are under types or methods of recruitment, internal recruitment and external recruitment. So here we know internal recruitment, we have said it refers to the use of internal sources to advertise vacancies inside the business. That's what we have talked about. So now we want to know the sources of internal recruitment that can be used. Sources of internal recruitment. So now they talk about sources of internal recruitment. They talk about internal emails, intranet, websites to staff. For example, email staff about supervisor vacancy. That's what you can do. Word of mouth. For example, a manager tells employees about an opening. That is that. Business newsletters and circulars. So we are talking about business newsletters and circulars. Also internal and management referrals. So for example, current supervisor recommends a co-worker. That is that. Notice board of the business. For example, posting a vacancy on a staff board. Internal bulletins or newsletters. That is, for example, a monthly newsletters lists open jobs. Recommendation of for current employees. That's when you are recommended by your fellows or you're recommended by your colleagues. Headhunting with the business or organizational database. For example, he shall select high performing employees. So these are the sources of internal recruitment. So now we come to the impact of internal recruitment. We know when we talk of impact, we're talking about advantages and disadvantages, positives or negatives. So we're going to start with positive or advantages. Cheaper and quicker to fill the post. For example, no add cost when promoting a staff. It's very cheap. Placement is easy as management knows employees' skills and personality or experience of staff. For example, manager knows that John stems from previous work, so the placement is going to be very easy. Provide opportunities for career paths within the business. For example, staff get motivated by promotion chances. So that is that the employee already has understanding of how business operates. Induction training is not always necessary. So less induction is needed. That is that. For example, internal hire already knows company rules, reduces the chances of losing employees as future career prospects are available. So it reduces what? Resignations. Resignation. Workers they because they see growth opportunities. Detailed, reliable information can be obtained from supervisors and um, employee records. So that is that. So now let us go to the disadvantages of internal recruitment, the negatives. The negatives. So it says the promotion of an employee could cause resentment among other employees. So it means it may cause jealousy. Others may feel unfairly passed over. That is that. The number of applicants from which to choose is limited to existing staff only. So limited pool of applicants. You see, you find, for example, only 5 internal candidates are available. So you're limited to only those 5. It is possible to promote certain employees who do not really have required skills for the new job. So risk of promoting unqualified staff. You see, for example, a good worker may not be a good manager. It may close the door for new ideas from outsiders. No new ideas. So, for example, internal staff think the same way as before. So no new ideas that the business is going to have. The business has to spend more money on training or developing existing employees all in your position. Extra training needed. So, for example, promoted a person needs management training. So it means now there are expenses that the business have to incur. Employees who are not promoted may feel demotivated. So non-promoted staff may feel demotivated. Employee will lose interest after not being chosen. So that is that. Now let us move on to external recruitment. As you know, when you talk of external recruitment, you're talking about use of external sources to advertise vacancies outside the business. So it says the following sources of external recruitment can be used. Following. So let us go to the sources of external recruitment. Sources of external recruitment. Yes, we're talking about recruitment agencies. External recruitment agencies, that is a company hires an agent to find what an engineer. Billboards. We are talking about what? The billboards. We are talking about printed media or newspapers. We are talking about electronic media. That is when we're talking about radio or television, social media or social networks or internal or business websites. So that's when we're talking about when you're talking about social media, that is when you're posting job ads on Facebook. Or with radio like or TV, that is where we're talking about radio advert for seasonal workers. Maybe let's say that recruitment agencies, we've talked about it, that is where when you hire an agent. Walk-ins, yeah, we're talking about applicant arrives with CVs, those are walk-ins. Also, headhunting, HR contacts skilled employee from another company. Professional associations, we can go make use of that. Networking, educational training and institutions, recruiting graduates at a career fair, posters just outside the business. So those are sources of external recruitment. So now we want to know the impact of external recruitment. As we're going to start with positive advantages. It says new candidates bring new talents, ideas, experience, skills into the business. So it means new manager introduces modern system. So you see, the new manager will come up with modern system. There is a large pool of candidates to choose from, large pool of applicants. For example, hundreds apply online. So you're not limited for candidates that you can choose from. there is a better chance of getting a suitable candidate with the required skills, qualifications, competence, who do not need much training or development, which reduces cost. So better chance of finding a qualified person. Better chance of finding a qualified person. So it means you are going to hire an experienced candidate, and that will reduce cost of training that particular person. It may help the business to meet affirmative action and BB targets. So it helps meet what BB targets, because now you're going to hire from designated groups. Minimizes unhappiness or conflict amongst current employees who may have applied for the post. So it avoids conflict among internal staff. No jealousy since outsider was hired. So that is that. Let us go to the disadvantage of external recruitment. Negative or disadvantage of external recruitment. It says external sources can be expensive. Example, recruitment agencies' fees, advertisement or in newspapers or magazines. So it can be expensive because now you are going to pay, for example, 20,000 recruitment agent's fee. So you see, it's very expensive. The selection process may not be effective. An incompetent candidate may be chosen. Wrong candidate may be selected. So that is that. Information on CVs or reference may not be reliable. So CVs may contain false information. Applicant lies about experience. Recruitment process takes longer, is more expensive as background checks must be conducted. So it's going to take long. For example, 6 weeks for adverts and interviews checks. News candidates generally take long to adjust to new work environment. New employees take time to adapt. That is that. In-service training may be needed, which decreases productivity during the time of training. So training may be needed. So which is gonna take time, and that will make production decline during that time of training sessions. Many unsuitable applicants can slow down the selection process. So many unsuitable applicants slow process. For example, HR sorts through 300 CVs, only 10 suitable. So you see, let us move on to selection process now. Selection procedure, in fact, option 1. Selection procedure. Determine the fair assessment criteria on which selection will be based. So, for example, HR decides candidates must have grade 12 plus 2 years experience. That is a criteria. Applicants must submit the application forms or curriculum vitae, certified copies of personal documents or IDs, proof of qualifications, and etc. So, receive application forms or CVs and documents. So, meaning to say the applicants submit CVs and as well as their ID copies, as well as their certified copies. Sort the received documents or CVs according to the assessment selection criteria. So you sort documents according to selection criteria. For example, HR separates CVs with required experience. Screen or determine which applicants meet the minimum job requirements and separate this from the rest. So here you screen applicants to see who meets minimum requirements. So only applicants with grade 12 are kept. That is, for example, so now we come to preliminary interview. These preliminary interviews are conducted if many suitable applicants were received. So it means you conduct preliminary interviews if needed. For example, HR interviews 20 applicants to reduce them to 5. Reference checks should be made to verify the contents on the CV. Example, Contact previous employers to check work experience. Here you check reference to verify CV information. For example, HR phones previous employers to confirm work experience of the applicant. Compile a short list of potential candidates identified. So you prepare what? A short list. For example, only 5 best candidates move to final interview. Shortlisted candidates may be subject to various types of selection tests, example, skills test, and etc. So meaning to say, conduct a selection test if needed. For example, a typing test for secretaries. That's what you're talking about. Invite shortlisted candidates for an interview. So here you invite short candidates for the interview. HR emails interview dates. That's what it can make it easy with that example. Written offer is made to the selected candidate. So you make a written job offer to selected candidates. So, for example, the successful applicant receives an offer. Inform unsuccessful applicant about the outcome of the application. Some adverts indicate the deadline for informing only successful candidates. So it means that you also have to inform unsuccessful applicants. You just email send saying position filled. That is that. So we have option 2 again. So with option 2, we are saying receive documentation like we've talked about, application forms, and sort it according to criteria of the job. You evaluate CVs and create shortlist or screen the applicants. So check information in the CVs and conduct what? References. We've talked about this. You conduct preliminary interview. Conduct preliminary sifting interviews to identify applicants who are not suitable for the job, although they meet all requirements. So that this when you are trying by all means to reduce the number. Assess test the candidates who have applied for senior position and ensure best candidates are chosen. Conduct interviews shortlisted candidates. Offer employment in writing to selected candidates. So let us come to the screening now. Screening as part of selection procedure. Screening as part of selection procedure. As it says, check application documents against the requirements of the job. Checking applications to eliminate unsuitable candidates. So that is that. For example, HR removes CVs with no qualifications. Candidates who meet the minimum requirements are separated from others. So it means that you separate candidates who meet minimum requirements, keeping only qualified ones. Do background or credit reference checks of applicants who qualify for the job. You are talking about background or reference or credit checks. Calling references to confirm employment. Prepare short list of suitable candidates for screening. So that is that. Choosing top 5 applicants. So now let us move on to purpose of interview. Purpose of interview. Purpose of interview. Obtains information about the strengths and weakness of each candidate. So that is to get information about candidate strengths and weakness. For example, interview reveals applicants confident but needs training in Excel. Interview reveals applicant that the applicant is confident, that is his strength. But there is a training, there is a gap when it comes to Excel. So that is that. Helps the employer in choosing and making an informed decision about the most suitable candidate. Helps employers choose the best candidate. For example, a manager selects the person who communicated best. Matches information provided by the applicant to the job requirements. Matches the applicant information to job requirements. For example, applicant shows they have the sales experience listed. that is that. Creates an opportunity where information about the business and applicant can be exchanged. So it allows exchange of information between business and applicants. For example, applicant ask about working hours, so they exchange what? The information to determine candidates' suitability for the job. So you determine whether the candidate is suitable. For example, the manager decides candidate has the right personality, evaluate skills and personal characteristics of the applicant. So interview, test, communication, and problem solving. So now let us go to the role of interviewer before interview. Role of interviewer before interview. The interviewer should develop a core set of questions based on skills and knowledge and ability required. So we are saying develop core questions. Develop core questions. So that is that. For example, prepare questions about teamwork. That is that. Check, read the application, verify the CV of every candidate for anything that may need to be explained. Anything that may need to be explained. So you check and read candidates' CVs. That is that. You check and read candidates' CV. For example, notice a gap in employment to ask about. Move and prepare the venue of the interview. That is that. So, for example, meeting room booked and arranged. Set the interview date and ensure that all interviews take place on the same date if possible. So you set the interview date and schedule. Inform all shortlisted candidates about the date and place of interview. So that is that. So you inform shortlisted candidates about the date of the interview. So let us move on. Plan the program for the interview and determine the time that should be allocated to each candidate. So you plan the program and time per candidate. For example, each interview lasts for, let's say, 20 minutes. That is that. Notify all panel members conducting the interview about the date and place of interview. So you notify panel members. You email the panel with the timetable. So that is that. Let us go to the role of interviewer and interviewee during the interview. So we're going to start with the role of interviewer during the interview. The role of interviewer during the interview. As it says, allocate the same amount of time to each candidate. For example, every applicant gets 20 minutes. That shows saying allocate the same amount of time to each candidate. So that's what I'm saying. For example, every applicant gets 20 minutes. Introduce members of the interviewing panel to each candidate or interview. So you introduce the panel. For example, this is the HR manager, this one is the financial manager, this one, just like that. Make the interviewee feel at ease. So you make the interview feel comfortable. For example, offer water and greet politely. Explain the purpose of interview to the panel. So we explain the purpose of interview. For example, we are interviewing for admin assistant. That is that. Record interviews response for future reference. So that is that you write notes during the interview. That's what it means. Do not misinform or mislead the interviewee. So avoid misleading the interviewee. Do not promise a salary increase. So that is that. Avoid discriminatory or controversial types of questions. For example, asking a female candidate about family planning, having children. That is that. So avoid discriminatory or illegal questions, like asking about pregnancy. Do not ask about sex. Provide opportunity for the interview to ask questions. Allow the interview to ask questions. You can just say, do you have any questions for us? That is that. Close the interview by thanking the interview for attending the interview. So close by thanking them. Thank you for coming. So this is what you have to do. So now we come to the role of interviewee during the interview. Greet the interview by name with solid handshake, friendly smile. So that is that. Greet politely with eye contact. For example, good morning, Mr. Smith. Also, listen carefully to the questions before responding. Listen carefully before answering. Pause before responding to questions. Make eye contact and have a good posture and body language. Maintain good posture and confidence. Sit upright, avoid slouching. Show confidence and have positive attitude or be assertive. So that is that. You show what? A confidence. You show a confidence. Be inquisitive and show interest in the business. Show interest and ask questions. What training opportunities are available? Those are such questions that you can ask as an interviewee. Ask clarity-seeking questions. Ask clarity-seeking question. Show respect. Show respect and treat the interview with its due importance. So you show respect and seriousness. Try to dress neatly and behave professionally. Be honest about mistake and explain how you deal with it. So be honest about mistakes. For example, I learned from previous error by improving my planning. Know your strengths and weakness and be prepared to discuss it. So know your strengths and weakness. For example, my strength is teamwork, weakness is overthinking. So that is that. Thank you very much. This is the end of the presentation. We are going to still further. We are still going to go further with chapter 2 notes. But for today, we are ending here on the difference, the roles, in fact, of interview and interview during the interview. So thank you very much for your time. Please make sure that you are share with others. I thank you.